The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, welcome to this Collaborative Game Council's webinar with Tien. I'm really excited to have him with us. I'll introduce him in a moment. I just have a few housekeeping items. First of all, we are going to have an interactive session here. After about 30 minutes or so, Tien's going to walk through some slides, and then we'll do question and answer. And so while he's talking, I want to welcome you to post questions or comments on the GoToWebinar control panel, which I'll be monitoring. And then I'm going to call on people, and I'll actually bring you in live to the conversation so you can ask your question directly and have an interactive conversation with Tien. We have another webinar tomorrow with Lauren Mayer, the president of NPR, National Public Radio, who's going to walk us through what she learned in dealing with their sexual harassment crisis over the last year. And that's going to be another great conversation, and I look forward to many of you joining us for that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started today. Let me give you a little background on Tien. He's just he's got a great history, and I've known him for a long time and respected the work that he's done. So first thing to know is he was employee number 11 at Salesforce.com in 1999. And that's pre-revenue, pre-product, pre-everything, basically. And he worked there for 9 years and became the first chief marketing officer and then chief strategy officer. In 2004, when I hosted my first major councils dinner in San Francisco at the Carnelian Room with friends like Stuart Butterfield and others, Tien was also there. And in his 9 years at Salesforce, he built their original billing system, held a bunch of roles like in technology, marketing strategy, building out product management, etc. And then, as I said, as chief strategy officer. He left in 2008 to start Zuora, a mobile billing platform, which he has now taken public. He's written, of course, this wonderful book, Subscribed, which I'm guessing many of you have, and we'll talk a little bit about today. He's got a BA in electrical engineering from Cornell and a master's from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. Named Entrepreneur of the Year by EY in 2016. CMO of the Year finalist by the CMO Council, and a bunch of other great designations. He's also on the board of directors for Network for Good. So Tien, I know you have a lot going on. We really appreciate you stopping by and talking with us today. And as I mentioned to you earlier, we have some of your longtime customers in the webinar with us today, as well as others who are in companies that are just now thinking about building a subscription part to their business. So we really look forward to what you have to say and to the conversation that we can create here together.
Thanks, Phil. Really excited to do this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Should I just go?
Yeah. Just go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Make sure. So really appreciate you having me. It's an honor to really present to the suspicious group. Just to kind of frame the presentation here. Phil talked about my background at Salesforce, and in here, if you simplify it down, Salesforce.com was really about two things, right? It was really about trying to figure out this new technology model that we now call cloud computing or software as a service. But just as important, it was this new business model. And we always thought these two models really had to go together, right? Really had to go together. And this new business model was, at the time we called it a pay-as-you-go or a subscription-based business model. And that was just as important to our ability to disrupt or transform the software sector, if you will, in terms of the way it used to work, which was selling, upfront licenses to companies, and to saying, you know what, just point your browser to us, we'll take care of everything, and you just pay based on, whatever it is that makes sense, right? Number of users, number of transactions, and whatnot. And obviously we know how that story continues to play out in our lives as the entire software sector, Adobe, Microsoft goes into that. But when we step back, what we thought was there was nothing about a subscription-based business model.
Hey, Tien, can you just say that one more time? That we lost you for a moment there.
Okay, how's it now?
Good, perfect. It was just about 5 seconds. So
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing about what we did that was specific to the software sector, that the subscription-based business model could be applied to anything. And what companies are wrestling with now in terms of digital transformation, right? There's certainly a wave of digital transformation that was more about how do we use digital technologies to make our, the current way we do business more efficient. But digital disruption at its core is really about changing the business model. And so we took really a lot of the thoughts that we learned in making the subscription business model work for their software sector, and we pulled up and we said, look, how do we think about this in a more holistic way, right? And see how it could really apply to any company. And this led really to the 10 years of work that we've been doing here at Zuora, helping some of the world's best brands build, manage, and grow subscription business models. And then really put it into a book. And so the book is really a set of concepts that we think are explaining what the shift to subscription business model is truly about, and peppered with stories and examples that bring that to life. And so to give a sort of a summary presentation here of the book, what we see is a big shift in business models, right? We pull back, we see the last 120 years has been an era of selling products, right? And this was brought upon by mass production, right? Industrialization, and this whole idea of the assembly line, and this whole idea of saying, look, the essence of businesses, of companies, is to come up with a hit product, and then to manufacture, sell, right, distribute as many units of that product as possible. And this is why the Model T originally was any color that you want as long as it's black, right? Standardization really allowed scale. Scale allowed us to produce as many units and drive down the cost per unit to the lowest marginal cost possible. And that was essentially the basis of competition. Right. And so even in the digital world, companies are still focused on how do I sell more movie tickets? How do I sell more songs? How do I sell more newspapers or more articles? Right. Just like I sell as many laptops or phones or cars or pens. And digital technology is really changing that. It's really changing the focus away from the product to a service or an experience. Right. And it allows us to extract the thing that we really wanted when we bought the product, and then to get that instead of the actual product itself. And so when we look at digital disruption, what we see is this new way of thinking about business models is really what's disrupting companies, right? Uber is coming along and saying, look, you don't have to buy cars. You can simply point your browser to our service. I'm here at point A, I want to get to point B, and we'll do that for you, right? Without having you worry about the actual physical car ownership. And so when we look at let's just say the Fortune 500, whether it's the Fortune 500 companies that have done a good job of transforming and continue to be relevant and leading edge, right, versus being disrupted and being swallowed up by other companies or going out of business, or you look at the folks that are sitting these days at the top of the Fortune 500, right, which are digital native companies, right, the Facebooks, the Apples, the Amazons, the Googles. Or you look at this next generation that's coming up, and hopefully they all go IPO this year or next. They all have one thing in common, right? And it's that they don't really focus on the product. They start with the customer, and they recognize that as our world becomes more digital, we as customers expect different things, right? We want the outcome of what we want, right? Not the ownership. And the idea of not owning things might feel odd, but the first time, right, you get exposed to software as a service, and there's a wave of companies, wave after wave of companies, including really Fortune 500 companies, probably around 08, 09, that basically said, look, I can't, there's a recession, I can't afford software, I'm going to go ahead and buy software as a service. And oftentimes they would buy Salesforce as one of their first products, right? And they realize, that actually works better. And there's all these hassles that I don't have to deal with now. And I want more of that. Or you try Uber and your need to have cars gets reduced, right? These things are highly customized. And for the software as a service companies on the phone, I mean, you guys obviously realize that, right? The ability for customers to customize your service is a really, really big differentiator versus the old world where, you know, companies like Oracle and SAP in the old generation would say, don't customize our software, use it as is, right? That doesn't really make any sense. And then this constant evolution. Again, the software as a service companies all pioneer, look, we're just going to update the software. You don't have to worry about it. You always got the latest version. Your customers get used to getting, you know, 3, 4, 5 versions of your software updates a year. You're seeing that happen in everywhere, right? Your phone gets updated, your set-top box gets updated, Netflix adds more service, and even the Teslas, and soon every car, since they're all coming off the assembly line with a Wi-Fi or a cellular connection, they update themselves, right? The Tesla cars update themselves every 2 or 3 weeks. And so if you experience that, and then you step into, you know, say a Mercedes that hasn't changed in the last 3 to 4 years, it feels weird, right? It feels weird not to have the latest things. And so this is what we just mean by a subscription economy, that as customers in our personal and professional lives, we have a different set of expectations now. We prefer to subscribe to things, right, increasingly than actually to buy things. And we're seeing this permeate every single industry, right? And, you know, you can say it started in technology, it started in software, but you're seeing happen in your healthcare lives, right? In your entertainment lives, in your education lives. And so when we draw from these lessons, right, you're seeing the technology industry certainly gone through that. And there was a while when Salesforce went public where we had to spend a lot of time explaining to Wall Street, to companies, why this is different, why it's not just for small businesses, why Oracle and Siebel can't just come and do what we do, right? But you're seeing, you know, more and more, and when Adobe basically said, look, we're just going to flip to subscriptions entirely, and it worked, and their stock went up, and Wall Street got comfortable with it, right? It just ushered in a wave of companies saying, look, we can do this transformation from software licenses to subscriptions. And now you're seeing this permeate the hardware companies as well, realizing that, okay, if I'm getting used to just using compute power storage on Amazon, right, what does that mean for the hardware companies? We're seeing examples in retail. And so we have a whole chapter on retail, of how retail really needs to start with the e-commerce experience. But in the retail sector, we like to give 2 examples. The first example is Amazon versus Walmart. And we think the industry is incorrectly characterizing Amazon as versus Walmart as e-commerce versus bricks and mortars, right? And sitting here in 2018, you know, Walmart has a lot of e-commerce revenues, and Amazon is opening bricks and mortar stores. But they're still very, very different, because Amazon takes everything you do back to your Amazon ID, right? If you ever buy something from Amazon's physical bookstore and you just say, look, I'm just gonna use my credit card, I'm not, you know, don't scan my phone. They give you a receipt, and they encourage you to go back home and punch in some number into your Amazon account, and you get like 5% back, right? And why do they want to do that? Because they want to track every single one of your interactions and your transactions back to your Amazon ID, right? So Amazon says, okay, when I wake up, I'm not competing with Walmart, I'm really competing with my customers' other IDs, their Google IDs, right? Their Netflix IDs, their Facebook IDs, whatever it is that they happen to be using to run their lives. Walmart, on the other hand, you can see they don't do that. There's 200 million people, I think 100 million people that walk into Walmart every 2 weeks in just the US alone. They buy something, and there's no record of that transaction back to a one-to-one relationship, right? That's anchored on a Walmart ID. And even, you know, you buy something on Jet, you buy something on you know, Walmart's other digital assets, right, e-commerce assets, they're not connected. There's no single Walmart ID that ties all this stuff together, right? So it's a completely different way of thinking, which is why Amazon has gone into all these different areas. And so it's never really been about e-commerce versus bricks and mortars. It's been about customer-centric business models. Yeah, transaction. But the key thing is it's an anonymous transaction often, right? Because you just care about the sale of the product, right? And the customer only exists as a person to buy your product, right? Versus an ongoing relationship. We love the Fender example too, which is, you know, not exactly a retailer, but it's they sell products, and they're saying, look, how do we sell more guitars? And the CEO there said, you know, why don't we just look at it from the customer's point of view? And he commissioned a study And when they did that, they realized, well, here's the good news. Half our guitars every year are sold to first-time guitar buyers. So lots and lots of people entering the market, right? You drill into it, you know, a lot of demographic changes as well, right? A lot of women are buying guitars. Just too hard, right? So 90% of our customers actually quit after 3 months. And so as a SaaS company, you're like, gosh, like 90% of customers quit after 3 months. That's crazy. Now, the other side of it, though, is if they're still playing in month 12, they play for life, right? They're a customer for life, and they just don't put the guitar down. And so there's this hump that you have to get over. And so their question is, well, how do we get over the hump? And so they've been launching, they have a whole Fender digital division now. They started with Fender Tune and all these other things, and now they have Fender Play. And, you know, it's going to cost you 60, 70, 80 bucks to bring somebody, you know, to go to somebody's house or have somebody come over to teach how to play the guitar. For 20 bucks a month, you can watch all these videos that teaches you how to play a guitar. And they definitely see it. The people that buy into Fender Play stay with the guitar more and they get over the hump more, right? And so that's how they're reducing their churn, if you will, and having a customer-centric way of looking at their business. So it's been a fascinating story. Another vertical that we highlight in the book is manufacturing. And we started seeing all these manufacturing companies, you know, come to us about 3-4 years ago. And it was like, you know, what's really going on here? And the answer was obvious when we looked at it. It was IoT, right? That, you know, for years people were talking about IoT. You weren't quite sure if it was real, if it was not real. But it turns out that manufacturing companies, especially, you know, where there's electronic components, have been putting lots and lots of sensors in their products, appliances, thermostats, you know, cars, and then connecting them to the internet. And so when we started talking to Caterpillar, they have about 2 million assets in the field, and at the time, about 200,000 of them were connected, right, to the internet, you know, collecting data and just dumping it on the internet. And I think it's up to like over 1 million. And so they've just been, you know, outfitting all their physical assets with this. And at first, the data just sat there. No one knew what to do with the data. And then the interesting there is Caterpillar's dealers are like billion-dollar companies, right? Their biggest dealers are like multi-billion-dollar companies. Caterpillar's like a $50 billion company. So some of these dealers were like, well, gosh, like this data is just sitting here. Why don't we build some apps and go service our customers? And then Caterpillar woke up and said, well, that doesn't make any sense, right? We should be doing this. I mean, this is our assets. This is our data. We're collecting it. Right? We want to work with the dealers, but we should provide a unified service, and we can see all these revenue streams. So the first time we met with them, they had this diagram that had 4 tiers of applications, increasing sophistication. And the simpler one, where we're just collecting the data, right? You know, find your device type things, right? Where's my tractor? The next one was these safety systems, where if the people, right, wear RFID chips, then these big machines actually know where they are and shut down, you know, if it's about to run over somebody. Predictive maintenance was something they talked a lot about publicly, right? How do I sense when these machines should be serviced? So I take them offline for hours versus, you know, they just go out of commission and it takes 2 weeks to get a part to the machine at that point, which is a lot of lost revenue, right? To fully autonomous systems. And so they have a vision for fully autonomous systems where, you know, these excavators are just using GPS and you just model how much dirt you want moved and in a CAD tool, and it beams it right to these tractors, and they just go out and do the work. And you're literally just paying for metric tons of earth moved. And so this, you know, this story is playing out. If you buy a washing machine today, chances are it's connected to the internet. Coffee makers connect to the internet. Right, and so everything's connected. Every car that you buy is connected to the internet, and so all the manufacturing companies are realizing, you know, there's these huge revenue streams that we can go build and go get, right? Now that our products are smart products, and so, you know, we talked about the media sector. We talked about a bunch of other sectors in the book. We're seeing early signs of this happening in the financial services sector, say in banking, in the insurance sector, in healthcare and utilities. But what we see really is this whole idea of an end of ownership, right? Why buy things if you can get what you need by subscribing to it? And so we call this a $90 trillion opportunity because that is the world GDP. Because when consumer habits that might have been anchored for decades against, a brand that they prefer or their parents prefer when they're buying a product. And now it shifts to a service. That's a land grab opportunity, right? And it's not clear whether, the incumbents like Coca-Cola win or a new startup wins. Does Ford win, or does Uber win, or does Tesla win? Right? It's just not clear. And boundaries between industries are starting to fall as well, right? And we're seeing that happen. And so this is the big thing that's going on right now with respect to digital disruption. Yes, half of it, just like what I said at Salesforce, right? It was a new technology model,
Yeah.
but it was also a business model.
Yeah.
And so digital disruption, a lot of companies are saying, gosh, okay, a new technology model, connected cars, right? A new technology model, right? Streaming videos. But there's a new business model that has to go with it as well. And so we boil it down to this picture. And then this picture is the one that's shared, that we find that our customers are sharing internally when they're talking about digital disruption. And the old business model is I'm selling products, and my goal is to put in as many channels as I can, because the more channels my product is at, the more I can sell it, right? So let's put the movie in the movie theaters. Let's put it on DVD. Let's put it on iTunes for people to buy, right? And I just try to sell, let's put our software into the hands of resellers and to distribute, into direct sales force. Let's give it to the SIs to sell. Oh, I'm a retailer. Let's open up an e-commerce channel, right? To something different, right? Which starts with the customer, but re-envisions that customer as a subscriber, someone you have a known relationship with, right? You got some ID, some email, perhaps a payment method, a PO or a credit card on file. And no matter where they are, you're trying to deliver your brand promise, if you will, right? But in a different way. And so Apple is saying, don't worry about how many iPhones I sell. Like, stop obsessing about that, right? And so they're saying we're more, every day that passes, we're not really the company on the left anymore, right? We have 1 billion plus Apple IDs. They actually don't reveal the exact number. It's the other half of what they need to do. And if 30% of our revenues are actually not around the phone sale or the iPad sale or not the hardware sale, right? There's all these services that people are saying, you don't upgrade your phone next year, well, who cares, right? Because you'll take that $500 or that $1,000, and hopefully you'll spend it on buying more movies, buying more storage, right? But subscribing to Apple Music and maybe Apple News, right? That's something else that's coming out soon. But that's how they think. Right? We got these relationships, and how do we monetize these relationships in different ways, right? Amazon's on the right, Walmart's on the left, right? Uber's on the right, GM traditionally is on the left. What GM found is, well, OnStar is actually on the right, and how do we leverage that brand and then turn that into our connected services brand as a direct relationship with the customers? And so that's our jumping off point. But then the next step is companies will say, well, how does this change what we do? And in the book, we share a real story, which was actually Electronic Arts. And this is years ago. Electronic Arts had just launched EA Access on the Xbox. And like in 3 months, they had like 250,000 subscribers. And this was like access to like the old games, right, that weren't selling anyway. So they put it on a streaming thing. You can subscribe to it. You can use it on the Xbox. And they're like, well, this is really interesting. And so we got invited to kind of kick off for 2 days. And Andrew, the CEO, at some point said, look, we're really good at selling games. We sell a lot of games. We sell a lot of games at $60 a pop. But we also know that, let's say we sell Battlefield 10. 2 years later, we'll come out with Battlefield 11. And we know that only half our customers that bought Battlefield 10 are going to buy Battlefield 11, right? Because they've moved on to other things. But if we take that $60 over time, over a 2-year period, but we're really good at keeping the customer engaged, right, with the Battlefield brand, maybe there's light games, maybe there's updates, maybe there's a social game, then we can carry a lot more of them over. And we're, instead of losing half our customers every 2 years and then having to go regain them. And so that embarked them on a strategy of saying, look, let's not overcomplicate things. You Sim guys, you go launch a subscription. You Madden guys, you go launch a subscription, right? You Battlefield guys, you go launch a subscription. and you see the gaming industry really moving more and more towards this world. But the whole room basically didn't know what to do. And they started arguing, right? They started arguing about, well, how do we jam our game onto a phone? Because it's a console game, right? Versus saying, well, it's not about that. Well, what else can you do on the phone that keeps your customer engaged, right? It's not putting your product exactly as it is on the phone. Marketing said, look, well, we love our Blitz launch days, right? It's really, really important. Sales changes, finance changes, IT changes. And so the second half of the book, we really talk about, if you distill down the fundamental change that ripples through that part of the organization when you switch from the business model that's centered on products to a business model that's centered on the customer, there's a bunch of things that changes, right? And so on the innovation side, we call it staying in beta forever, right? And there's a lot of SaaS companies on the phone. If you're older like me and you grew up in the software era, you probably had that first experience when you drop into a SaaS company, like we did in the early days of Salesforce, which is like, we can actually see what our customers are doing, right? And that's just a transformational moment when you say, like, it used to be opaque how my customers use my product, and now I can actually see. Now imagine that you're GM and you're having the same experience. You're Caterpillar, you're having the same experience, right? You're the New York Times and you're having the same experience. It's just transformational. And what you wind up doing is you wind up saying, let me just get something to market and let me iterate. And so fast iterations, right? Agile development. We have companies talking about agile factories where everything coming off the assembly line in the factory is customized for that specific user, and it could be changed on the fly, right? But agile development in continuous iteration is really, really important. And so the story that seems to resonate is Gmail, right? We tell the story of Gmail, and a lot of folks on the phone probably experience it. This product was beta for 5 years, and they just labeled it Gmail beta, and they finally took it out because large companies wanted to buy it. And the procurement office said, look, we can't pay for a beta product. And so all they did was just change the logo. And if you go to Gmail Labs and click a setting, you could put the word beta back if you're fond of it, right? And so yeah, it just shows you that this is just the new way of doing business, right? You get a product out there and you just iterate, right? So you're always in beta. It's not that you're just you're always collecting information. You're always seeing how customers are using your product, and you're always iterating. This is the modern world. So how do you apply that to cars? How do you apply that to tractors? How do you apply that to elevators, right? And how do you apply that to thermostats and washing machines?
Hey, Tien, can I jump in and say, we've got a number of people who want to ask you questions or share comments. Would you feel comfortable?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. Jason Randall, I'm going to call on you first. So get ready. What I'm going to do, Jason, is I'm actually going to unmute your line here so that we can hear you directly. And just so you can get ready for that, I'll just say, by the way, talking about continuous innovation, Tien, one of the things we started doing in the last year, as you remember, we have a couple council meetings a year where members come together, right, and help each other. And then we have an online system for, basically Quora, for the councils only. But a lot of questions that members have are more real time than that, but also need more of a confidential setting than an online forum. So we started doing peer coaching calls where one member asks a question and we go find 4 members with expertise. Like next week, one of our members is actually starting as the incoming CTO at IKEA. And so we've got the CTOs at Spotify, Salesforce, Raytheon, interestingly, and TripAdvisor coming together for 1 hour over Zoom to help her think about her first 60 days on the job, right? Yeah. And I'm loving these conversations. And I'm saying this now in part for the members on the line who haven't done one yet. Please get in touch with me. They are so much fun and they bring so much quick value to members. It's terrific. All right, so Jason, let's hear from you. So I'm going to unmute you. So Jason Randall, just so everyone knows on the phone, Jason is the president and CEO of AppFolio, which is one of the fastest growing publicly traded SaaS companies, great business. He actually joined as VP of product in 2008 and has been a council member since even before that, I think at GoToWebinar, Citrix Online, you joined originally, Jason, and has continued through this whole time, which has been great. And you are also a longtime customer of Zuora.
That's
So
right.
So I wanted to ask you, Jason, to join us, share a comment or question here with Tien as we're talking.
Yeah, great. Thank you. We've been long-time happy customers and appreciate it. My question, I don't know if you're going to get to this or not, so excuse me if I'm jumping ahead. But I've always been jealous of the data that you're sitting on in terms of understanding the value of subscription services. And my question is around price elasticity. And we're relearning a lot as we go in terms of what's possible, and especially what's different from older price philosophies and from premise-based or other services. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, what are you seeing as key trends or differences with more mature subscription pricing models, and where are these going to differentiate from how we thought of pricing in the past?
Yeah, it's fascinating seeing Netflix and Hulu play out right now.
Right.
Where you dropped their prices today when Netflix increased their prices.
Right.
And then Netflix increasing their prices 10 years ago was a big problem. The stock dropped like 30%.
Almost drove the company into bankruptcy. I mean, they lost 1 million customers within a month.
That's right. And the whole term price elasticity is anchored on a single transaction sale, right? And what is the price point that I will get this many units, right, or this many people to buy, and because that's how the term exists. What we're finding is that the magic of these subscription business models is, surprise, surprise, looking at it from a customer life cycle standpoint, and you're often better off taking a smaller deal to get a customer in and then growing with them over time, right? Especially, Jason, you obviously know the public company, we experienced the same thing, in the last year, is Wall Street rewards growth. And so if your growth, at least for your install base, is predicated on, their level of engagement with you, right? Some measure of usage, then you're going to grow faster. And so we have stats to back this up. We have stats to show that companies that use a usage-based pricing model, their growth rate is 8 points higher, right? So instead of 20%, it's 28%. That being said, if they're purely usage-based, then it's actually not as good. And so there's some balance between, predictable pricing models, right? $10 a month, to usage-based models, right? We get 2 gigabytes, and you got to pay per gigabyte after that. Right, and that balancing is really, really important to find that optimal growth rate. A second thing we found is, again, this is probably more of a B2C example, but a lot of people say, okay, well, these subscription businesses, all they're trying to do is they're trying to trick you into signing up and giving you your credit card, and then you're too lazy to cancel, right? In the B2B context, it's we'll just do an annual contract for $50K, and then we don't really bother the customer until they come up for renewal. Right, and then we'll go get another 50K again, and so we call these the set and forget it type of models. And we take that bucket, and then we look at companies that where on average 1 out of 10 of their customers come back and do a contract amendment, like they ask for more users, right? They go up a tier, they go from professional edition to enterprise edition, whatever it happens to be. They grow twice as fast as the set it and forget it guys. And then we stretch it even more. We looked at companies that on average, every customer comes back once a year and makes a contract amendment. All right. It could even be pausing your subscription. It could be anything. They grow 3 times faster than the set and forget it guys. Right. And so there's something about having a pricing model in a I'll call it a contract model that encourages customers to actively manage their subscriptions, right, to meet their needs, add more users, right, go up a tier, right, have a usage-based billing model that leads to growth, and it makes sense, right? And I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, because if some percentage of your growth is coming from your install base and it's happening naturally because your install base is using more of your service, then it's easier to grow, right? Versus at the extreme, the old transaction model where you have to sell every transaction every time in order to generate $1 of revenue.
What are you thinking as he's speaking? Do you feel like we've been able to answer your question? Were you hoping for more?
No, this is fascinating and really, really good. I could talk about this all day. So yeah, this is really helpful.
This is great. I'm gonna keep rolling. This is a great answer, and thank you again, Jason, for that question, and for all your support. When talking about peer coaching calls, we've worked with you over the years and with your team, right? When someone takes a new job, help bringing some peers on board to do a call to help them think about those next steps.
Yeah, it's been great.
I love how much you embrace the ethic of asking for help. Both you and Tien gave me great interviews for my next book. All right, we're gonna switch now. I'm gonna go ahead and mute you again, Jason, and I'm gonna bring in Scott Boyarsky. Scott, you raised your hand, so I'm hoping this is correct. But let me unmute you. Okay, Scott, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me, Phil?
Yeah. So let me just introduce you to Tien and the whole group here. So Scott today is SVP and Head of Product and Technology at Fidelity in Boston. He's relatively new there, about 6 months. Formerly ran digital home products for Comcast. Spent several years doing a lot of great stuff, hardware and software at Comcast, and was at Turner, Everyday Health, and Disney before that. Scott, what are you thinking about? What would you like to ask or comment on?
Yeah, so we're absolutely fascinated here by the subscription economy, and I was able to attend the conference that Zuora put on a few months back. Thanks for the invite to that. Yeah, it's great session, great dialogue. As we're looking at different subscription models in the subscription economy, privacy and regulation, certainly in our industry, comes up a lot, but I think globally there's a shift in awareness of privacy, and part of the allure to the subscription economy was by having that data from the user, being able to monetize it and find other ways to offset some of the normal channel revenue that you'd historically see in a standard product driven company. How are you seeing privacy factor into the subscription model, and what do you think the next few years, as particularly domestically, a GDRP version comes to the US? How will that change the value of the subscription and the pricing?
Well, it's a great question, and you guys are actually a customer too with your eMoney Advisors division. And
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we need to get together so I can learn more about that.
Absolutely. So, when Netflix did, the key word here is trust, right? When Netflix did their price increase a long time ago, there was a sense of violation of trust, that unilateral decision making, right? And when one side in a relationship sees the other side making unilateral decisions, the trust starts to erode, and so I think the answer is really simple. I think the answer is that the customer's data is the customer's data, and it's the customers, not the vendors, and the vendors is using it to provide a service for the customer. But if the customer ever leaves a service, they should be entitled to have their data back, and it should be black and white. I know most of the SaaS companies, that's certainly how they think. I think there is a role for regulation. I think in California you've seen 2 pieces of regulation over the last year that I think is positive for the subscription economy. One is you have to allow customers to cancel. Again, this is more of the B2C world. but no more calling an 800 number, right, that's buried somewhere and you're on the phone for 2 hours if you want to cancel something. There has to be an easy way to cancel online. Another regulation that just happened, I think, last week, and there's some bounds around it, but it's if you offer people a free trial and you take their credit card, they have to actively accept that at the end of the free trial that they are accepting a paid product, right? And so you're seeing, at least in California, the regulations trying to find a level playing field, but it all is around establishing trust between the company and their customers. And you know, a subscription is a relationship, and a relationship is a bilateral thing. I think where it gets really messed up often is these advertising models, right? Where it's not clear who owns the data. The company has an incentive to hold on to your data, right? To collect the data without you even knowing about it, to sell your data to other people, right? That's where it gets really, really problematic.
Yeah, that's a great question, Scott. And after this call, I'm also hoping to connect you and Tien so you guys can go offline, or someone on his team can talk to you more. Thank you. So I will now put you back on mute. And I'm going to call on Mike Lackman now. Mike, just to let you know, I'm going to unmute your phone. And we're actually going to put up a diagram that Mike sent us that's going to help with the question. And let me just introduce him. So Mike Lackman, he's been a council member now for a while. In 2012, he actually joined PetFlow, which was an early pet food subscription business, became the CEO of that after a couple of years and sold it. And now is the CEO at Trade Coffee, which is a startup backed by JAB, which owns Pete's and Stumptown and a bunch of other brands. And he's got, I think, an important and somewhat tactical, but I think instructive question for you, and I think will be helpful for all of us. So Mike, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Phil. Excuse me, thanks, Tien. I think that the question is somewhat related to the trust thread you're pulling at, but it feels like very often as tactical merchants, there's a desire to make subscription sign up as frictionless and put up as few stop signs as possible, when in fact consumers would prefer to have as much transparency into how it's really going to work as possible at that point. And then at cancellation, it's the kind of thing that, you know, product folks want to make as in some ways unoptimized as possible, that you don't want it to be too frictionless. And there's this incentive to try to put some barriers where you give customers some behavioral incentives to hit those cliffs around, you know, the difference between someone who's interacted with the product 3 times versus who's interacted with the product twice as a material difference in your cohort retention, that sort of stuff. Very, very much along the lines of what you described with Thunder, in terms of, you know, getting people to play for 6 months and so predictive of what they'll buy next guitar, sort of a thing. And I'm curious what advice you give to teams who are trying to reconcile the math of where that balance is between the merchant's best interest in terms of improving retention metrics and the customer's best interest in terms of things being super smooth and frictionless. What do you see really good teams do to create that balance, that it's not blind to the numbers, but it still sort of passes that test of customer centricity?
Well, I think it feels like every SaaS company has a it's probably every subscription company, but just being a SaaS company and talking to a lot of other SaaS companies, it's like a rite of passage where early on in their life they realize that they're losing as many customers as they gain, right? And then you got to really learn how to add value to your customers. And I think going down the false path of putting artificial barriers to them leaving your service, I mean, that's you know, that might help for the short term, but that's only going to create negative reputation. And so you find ways to make your product more valuable, right? And so obviously you want your product to be sticky, because that is what allows you to have a better business model. But how do you do that, right? And so so Spotify, for example, says, okay, look, you can set up all these playlists, you can share all these playlists, you can leave Spotify whenever you want, but those playlists kind of keep you back, right? Coming back. Netflix feels like, why are they able to do it now? Because it used to be just a DVD, and when they had their price hike, I'm guessing 12 years ago, a lot of people realize, oh, I've had the same DVD for 3 months and not really using the service, so why don't I cancel? And now it's so convenient. Netflix is like TV, right? And you watch one episode, you're gonna want to watch the next episode, and they're gonna hook you on the next show, right? The next serial, and so how do you provide value to your customers so they keep coming back, right? Not how do you put artificial barriers in front of them that they can't find the phone number, they can't find the cancel button, right, or things like that.
I wonder, Tien, do you have anyone on your team that will typically work with clients on the billing platform to think through sort of the base level tactics of this and kind of, I'm thinking there might be someone that Mike could talk to that could go, that could help him as they're drawing this thing out. Is that right, or?
Yeah, so we do it as part of our normal conversations. We're not a consulting company. We play around the idea, but at the end of the day, we are a technology company. We're a software company. That is our business model. So what we do is two things. We try to share a whole bunch of stories, right? Yeah. And we try to research our data and kind of provide that, right, to the community. And then we also bring customers together. And we find that customers sharing ideas with each other is often the best way for everybody to get more ideas. Very similar to
I believe in that. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, Mike, what do you want to follow that question up with another question, or?
No, I mean that's the way we tend to look at the world. I mean, I think it's a balance, but it's really encouraging to hear, given how much of the long game you've seen, that if you're not responding to cancellation feedback principally with investment in the product in order to prevent the root cause, then the symptomatic solution is symptomatic, and it really undermines the value of business. It's really wonderful to hear.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for the question, and thank you, Tien.
Sure.
All right, so let's bring on, I have a couple more people I want to call on, actually. Christoph Gillette, I'm going to call on you after I call on the next person, so I'm just giving you a heads up to think, because I know I think you have a question. But now I'm going to call on Greg Ott. Greg, so I'm going to unmute you. Greg Ott is also a longtime friend and council member. Today he's the president of NAV, which is essentially Credit Karma for small and medium businesses. He's former VP of marketing at QuickBooks, so thinking a lot about subscription businesses for a while. CMO at Demandbase, and I was back in the '90s. He started at P&G as a brand manager, so he's really seen this transition right from the hardcore product world to services and subscriptions. So, Greg, what are you thinking about? What would you like to?
Hi, Greg. Yeah, Tien, thanks a lot for the presentation. Great insights. Would it be fair to say there's almost two economies forming, a subscription economy and a non-subscription economy around durable goods? And if so, what advice do you have when there's not a way to turn your product into a subscription? What advice do you have for those companies who still tap into the kind of the relationship with the customer and putting that at the core? So I think about things like, I work in financial services now, formerly in packaged goods. How do we tap into the best practices of the subscription economy when our product doesn't really lend ourselves to it?
So we're a little bit out there. We don't believe that there's any business that can't subscription economy, and the reason for that is the trap that people have is they still focus on the product, right? And they say, well, how am I going to get the customer to rent this product? Like cement. I mean, how am I ever going to sell cement as a subscription, right? And this is why we like the Caterpillar story. I mean, how are you going to sell tractors as a subscription? I mean, that's just renting a tractor. But it's really understanding what is your customer really trying to do, right? And because it's not about the movie, it's about entertainment, right? It's not really about software. It's about doing work or productivity. It's not about the car. It's about getting from point A to point B, right? And so we even have crazier ideas, right? We have a company that's playing around with smart floors. And I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see physical products, non-electronic products, tables, floors, chairs, things like that. Will have a thin veneer of electronics, and they're going to become smart products. But they said, well, what the heck are you going to do with the smart floor? Well, when they put down a floor, they put down sensors underneath the floor to detect traffic patterns, and their mind is just exploding with ideas.
Not to mention
their first
of water pipes, right? Which
yeah, there's a company down in San Jose it's water pipes, and you can measure water flow through the pipes.
yeah.
Now, who needs it, right? And there's distribution channel issues, right? They sell through construction. Their last idea was maybe the hotels really can use this thing, right? If you can measure water usage through the pipes, you can give people incentives to, not steam their clothes, right, with the shower on, and just things like that, right? And so the point is to say, I have a manufacturing capability of products. I have all these digital technologies I can use, right? How do I hit a higher level of service level, right? That the customer is actually looking for. What is the outcome the customer is looking for?
Yeah. Yeah.
The food and fashion companies are probably two areas that we see that there's an explosion of innovation, but not quite clear yet. How do you get into people's daily patterns when it comes to food, or daily patterns when it comes to clothes, right? Stitch Fix is a good example. We've seen some better examples on a small scale for food, but Blue Apron is probably like a counterexample, because it's not exactly solving your day-to-day food problem, right? It's more of a novelty that you try every once in a while.
All right, cool. I'm going to jump in here. Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that question, and I think it's something that a number of people were thinking about on the phone. So remember, the total addressable market, according to Tien, is $90 trillion. So, all right, I'm going to mute you now, Greg, and I'm going to call on Christoph. So Christoph, I'm going to now unmute your phone. This is Christoph Gillette. Christoph, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, so Christoph is currently the Chief Product Officer at Skillshare. Moved over there just about 6 months ago, actually. I think I have that right. Yeah.
4 months. Yeah.
Spent four years at Vimeo, and actually, great story for the book. He was put in charge, or he put himself in charge of developing the streaming business for Vimeo, and didn't know anything about it. Went out and just talked to everybody in the marketplace, and was very open and transparent. I don't know anything about streaming, but can you help educate me? And he got so smart, he ended up leading the acquisition, a major acquisition for Vimeo that had a big impact. And now he's at Skillshare and doing some great stuff there. So Christoph, what are you thinking about here? What would you like to ask or comment on?
Yeah. Well, I have a super tactical question, and then a little bit more strategic question as well. And by the way, we are in deep discussions with you guys about being a subscription and payment provider for us. We built it all in house, and now we're thinking about we're giving ourselves essentially a heart transplant, and I need to make sure all the arteries are prepared to accept a new heart. Skillshare is an online education platform catered towards creators. And one of the interesting things about our business is it's cyclical, similar to like a gym, where there's a high aspirational nature to it. And so people join because they want to learn more, they want to develop their skills, they want to be better professionally. But then they don't have the time. There are different hurdles. It could be time, it could be motivation, it could be fear. And so with this business, similar to a gym business, there's a lot of dormant users who love the idea of the subscription, but actually don't utilize it enough. And so the question is, what do you think about how do you best engage those dormant users without poking the bear and disrupting your business model? Because there's a lot of passive income that we do get from those users that aren't necessarily engaged, but have the aspiration to engage.
Yeah. I remember this exact same conversation to Salesforce. Right? We sold a lot of software. It was easy to sell. It was $50 a user a month, cheaper than your expense report, cheaper than a cup of coffee a day. and then people just wouldn't use it. And it wasn't everyone just like, okay, we use Salesforce.com. And back then, people didn't really use Salesforce automation systems. They just did it in spreadsheets. The internet was not very reliable. There was no high-speed bandwidth to people's house. There was no Wi-Fi in the hotel, and so people just didn't use it. And the same conversation. Well, why poke the bear? Why not? Why tell them they're not using it? Because they're just going to cancel. But it's just not a sustainable business model. And I don't know where you guys are. I'm assuming you guys are private.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no possible way you're going to go public like that, right? Because
No, of course not.
yeah, so you just got to conquer, right? And usually what you find is if you do it right and you poke the bear, again, you got to do it right. So you got to figure out how to do it. Is their aspirations are still there. They still want to learn. The reason they sign up for your service, it's still there. And so the innovation is how do we conquer that? But then the flip side is once you solved it, you're like the only company that solved it, right? Because the one big difference in products versus services is if it's a physical product, it's just so easy for other companies to copy your products these days, right? They just reverse engineer it. They go to Foxconn, they say, could you just make me the same thing that you did in Apple, right? But if it's your knowledge of your customers and the data about your customers, the signal that your customers are giving to you that says, okay, the customer's signaling this to us, so let's do this, right? They haven't logged in 3 days, so let's, we learned that, through trial and error, that if they haven't logged in 3 days and we do X, right, that really moves the dial, right? Or this is why we have multiple editions of the product. Right, and or we change our pricing and packaging, or we combine our product with another product to kind of smooth out the hills and valleys, right? And you just get good at that, right? And you guys will solve that because you're focused on it, you're dedicated, this is your passion, and then once you solve it, that becomes your competitive advantage, and it's hard for other companies to dislodge that.
I just want to totally double underline that. I so strongly agree with you, Tien. And I will say, I've kept the councils purposely small with a community of people I trust, and I like that. But one of the things we do is we work overtime to help our members actually, like it's, like a peer coaching call. Like, I promote that all the time, and we do all kinds of things to help people actually come to the point where they will accept doing a call like that and then discover how powerful it is. Because I know asking for help is hard to do, and I know people are very busy. So we're poking the bear, so to speak, all the time, possibly sometimes to the point of harassment. But I want our members to know that like we're very serious about this. We really have a mission here to help them, ask important questions in confidential settings with peers and get some real help to be able to move forward and make better decisions. And I feel that strongly for me, and I feel that strongly, obviously, for all the companies over the years I've worked with in terms of their customer experience. So I appreciate your strong passion about that. And I totally get it, Christoph, but I think and as Tien is saying, if you can then solve that, boy, that becomes enormously powerful because,
The company that's getting a lot of conversation, dialogue about this right now is Peloton. And, they just seem obsessed with getting to use that damn machine. And they're always poking the bear.
Yeah.
Right? Like, well, how about just like a 5-minute run? We'll just give you a 5-minute run, right? Yeah. And so they try to take away all excuses.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. I know we're just past the hour, and your time, Tien, is precious, and so is everybody who's on the phone. Christoph, if you have further questions, I'm sure that Tien and his team will be happy to answer you, and I know you guys are in the middle of conversations with them. Let me know if there's anything I can do behind the scenes to help facilitate that, of course. Thank you for everybody who called in. And Tien, you're doing so much these days. You're on CNBC all the time. You're running your own conferences. You guys are publicly traded. You're really growing like it's just great to see. And congratulations on your success. And thank you for the leadership you're providing around the customer-centric subscription economy. I think it's really powerful. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. All right.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye-bye.